Debussy, Ravel and Stravinsky were in their different ways and their slightly different times, all looking for an alternative to the great big monolithic German symphonic and operatic culture that had dominated classical music for well over a century. In many stimulating ways, of course. And Debussy had started as a passionate Wagnerian. He'd found Wagner originally rather liberating. But interestingly, the political world began to change, and with the Franco-Prussian Wars, increasing alliance between Russia and France, and suddenly all these composers from these different places were beginning to look somewhere else for inspiration. And what I think that composers like Debussy and Ravel were fascinated in, interestingly enough, it's what, of course, originally drew Debussy to Wagner, was sex. Exoticism connected with sensuality. Composers like Ravel and Debussy were looking in the East and in exoticism for a kind of sexual innocence, if that's not a contradiction in terms. An uncorrupted sexuality, a place where sexual longing and fulfillment were not tainted with the idea of sin, that there was almost a childish, paradisical freedom about it all. And a work like Debussy's L'Après-midi d'un Faune or Ravel's Scheherazade, Debussy's Ancient Greece or Ravel's Far East, these are places where the senses are not inhibited, they're free. There's no guilt. There's nobody saying thou shalt not. The opening of L'Après-midi d'un Faune is one of the great moments when music turns a corner and enters a new age. You could say that modernism is born there. This completely free-floating flute line that sounds as if it doesn't have a beat to it. It sounds as if there's no bar lines anywhere. And then these chords that just drift in and out like perfumes. They come and they drift in and they're gone. Or the shaking of a veil in a gentle, warm breeze, this kind of thing. Everything is tremulous and hazy and dreamlike and free, and at the same time there's this wonderful sense of sexual arousal sort of gently inferred underneath all this music. Debussy also found sounds in the music of the Far East. He'd attended the great Paris Exposition and heard the sound of a Balinese gamelan ensemble, and he was enchanted by this. And again, when you turn to the beginning of L'Après-midi d'un Faune, you can see, although it doesn't sound in the least like Balinese gamelan music, something of that spirit is there. And later on, where you hear what he calls the antique cymbals, these two tuned cymbals that you can hear making this delicious little bell-like sound later on, that is a direct invocation of the sound of the Far East. If you think of the bells that certain Sufi mystics use or Indian mystics use on their fingers to create that sort of that ringing ritualized sound, or the prayer bowls, Tibetan prayer bowls, they have a similar kind of exotic evocation for a lot of people. And you can hear Debussy playing with that as early as 1893, which is truly extraordinary. He was on the case right from the start.